The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling,
whether you like it or you don't like it,
needs us. As I promised, 24 hours later, here I am, Wrestling is Real podcast, another episode. We're going to cover right now the post-show for Ric Flair's last match, which happened tonight. I really enjoyed the card, and I'll tell you, the pay-per-view gave me a lot of enjoyment for a lot of reasons, even before we got the matches started. Because when I get into the whole idea of how the matches are booked out, the undercard, which was tremendous, I missed the pre-show with everything that was going on. Long story, a lot of issues with internet tonight. I'm working on hotspots right now because I've had an outage in my neighborhood for the last 4 days, actually the last 5 days, trying to keep things connected to keep doing programming, because I did work on a hotspot last night for SummerSlam, but there's only so much data available, and I had to go and work on getting more data until I can get everything set. Hopefully tomorrow, AT&T will show up, and they'll actually go ahead and replace the modem in my house, and all will be well and good in the world, because we had a big issue that, I don't know, there was just something that happened where everybody's internet within the neighborhood got shot. The ground cable was like all messed up. We don't have fiber in our neighborhood. It's a little bit older, but it's okay. Made it through. Now let's going to go to the actual card tonight. So there's a couple of things right off the bat when it comes to Ric Flair's last match. The arena, Municipal Auditorium, looked good. Nice decorating. You know, they didn't go over the top when it comes to trying to create some elaborate set. You saw the old school 1985 World Championship Wrestling set from TBS from the back of the day, the Techwood Studios, as they referred to. Tony Schiavone, David Crockett handling all the commentary, and a cast of characters coming in for commentary of guest announcers representing each product that was on the show, which really worked great, because David Crockett didn't need to make too much of a point. He's the promoter, basically. For him, it was just like, okay, he's getting in here. He's a wrestling fan. He's kind of just like a person in the crowd enjoying this and not being very familiar with all the stars that have come in. Except for, you know, Rick and Jeff Jarrett and others like that. But that's what was brought in here. Because that's what always David Crockett was. He was never like the whole intense kind of guy, but he was part of the product, and they put him on there on TV, and he would, you know, he was good to watch. He was good for holding the microphone for Ric Flair if he had to get him to cut a promo right before the end of the night, leading up to Braves baseball or whatever they're going to be putting on. So there was that part. This great mix of a nostalgia of this Jim Crockett Promotions deal and the epitome of the New Wrestling Alliance. When you see all these different organizations that are brought together, you had NWA, AEW, a little bit of WWE, you had MLW, you had Impact Wrestling, you had, you know, New Japan Pro Wrestling, and you had AAA. Like, wow. Everybody we would want to see in these matches just really put some good stuff together. So I really enjoyed what they did with that. I did not get to watch the pre-show, which I said was Ren Narita over Yuya Uemura, because Clark Connors could not make the trip. I guess he's injured. So that was made change. Then you had the Bunkhouse Battle Royal, where Bully Ray was one of the last people in the match. In the match, you also had Cal Hero, Big Damo, Crimson, Gringo, Loco, Komander, Wolfie D, Sinn, Bodhi, Effy, Matthew Justice, one called Manders, Jordan Oliver, Ricky Shane Page, Blake Christian, Joey Janela, and James Storm and Mance Warner. The Southern Psychopath is your winner in this match, which was really cool. And then, as I said, the announcers they brought on throughout the night. I missed Dave Prazak. I realized he was in this, and I didn't get to catch him calling, but I think, well, Dave Prazak's still GCW, right? So he was in there because of Joey Janela and Blake Christian and others being in this match tonight in the Bunkhouse Battle Royal. Then we get into the match and say, okay, the guest announcers, they all stood out really well. You had Tom Hannafin for Impact Wrestling, who was tremendous in the Impact Wrestling, representing with 2 title matches on the show. You gave us the world title and the Knockouts world title. That's pretty outstanding to me. I really enjoyed that. Then you got Ian Riccaboni representing Ring of Honor. He was great. Joe Dombrowski representing MLW. He gave a lot to, when it comes to the combat sports field, to the AAA matches, and with MLW with representing Jacob Fatu, which was really great stuff here all together. I really enjoyed that. Scott D'Amore was in there as well. And that was part of the Motor City Machine Guns and the American Wolves, which was great commentary there. Nick Aldis coming in because of the NWA factor with Ricky Morton, Kerry Morton against he reformed second generation or, multi-generational Four Horsemen, with, Brian Pillman Jr. and Brock Anderson. That was just great stuff. Listen, for those wrestling fans out there, I know there's a very small unguent of fans that are really interested in this product. But this is because it is something to be an old school fan and watching back to 1985 or even before that. And watching TBS and remembering the kind of familiar faces, the feel, the look, the graphics, the whole nine was great. Even if it wasn't Ric Flair's last match, I really just enjoyed the whole show as a whole. I enjoyed it. They had, really good matches tonight. Really good matches tonight. And across the board, the commentary was good. Even though we didn't necessarily get them, like it's not an Excalibur out there that's just calling every move in the ring like a Joey Styles. We're not getting that. Like Shivani, listen, he still got it. He can still do this just like anybody else. So when you see him on Dark Elevation, that's the great thing where Tony Khan continues to get him out there to do announcing because he's fresh. And him and David Crockett had some fun tonight. You can just tell. And I think the commentary along with the other announcers really made for this show really fun. It was really, really good. I enjoyed that. Nice to see Hugo Savinovich and Carlos Cabrera working together again on Spanish commentary. Had a little bit of them. And then the matches with this exhibition of this new wrestling alliance, if you're paying attention to what happened tonight, a couple of things really stood out. First of all, the Impact titles being pushed in here. Jacob Fatu got some real attention because we never saw a finish to that match. They gave a lot of time to that match. When you're looking at it, okay, Fatu and Alexander went 10.5 minutes before we had the run-in. You had 10 minutes for Motor City Machine Guns, 5 minutes each for the Four Corners match for the Progress World title, Killer Kross and Davey Smith. Then the Four Horsemen Rock and Roll Express match was 7 minutes 40 seconds. Ray Phoenix in the four-way match, that got 12 minutes. The Briscoes and the Von Erichs got 8 minutes. Jordan Grace, the Impact World title got 9 minutes. And of course the Ric Flair match got 27. For what it's worth, listen, all that was put across the board. No problem with the timing. And I almost was kind of surprised that it ended so early because they did start at 6:05 for the pre-show, 7 o'clock for the main card. And that's when I caught on. And in that main card I caught on, I'm watching. And, by the way, the four-way AAA match, show stealer. We all knew it was going to happen, but there was a lot of things I kind of expected from this show. So there was time for the Motor City Machine Guns, 10 minutes. They got a lot of stuff in. Good to see Eddie Edwards and Davey Richards together, playing up the whole story of some ring rust with them being a tag team while the Machine Guns were working so well. A lot of good backstory. D'Amore was really good at putting all this together. Definitely putting over the Machine Guns because he trained them. Going back so far with those two in the company. In the previous TNA, going back to the Fox Sports Net days, almost to the pay-per-view days going that far. So you got that going for you. And to see these guys together, this was just a great little dream match to put together. These guys, curtain jerker, you put them out there, yeah, they're going to rock and roll it. It was good. The crowd was a little bit quiet though. They really didn't get overly into this match. It was definitely more down the line, but the crowd, I don't know if it was just not mic'd that hot, but the crowd was good for a lot of things, but it wasn't like a super hot crowd. I think they were just kind of just subtle, subdued, a little bit, relaxed. They were just enjoying the show. A lot of great people at ringside, by the way. You got Mick Foley, you got Undertaker, Dom Dallas Page. You brought, Kid Rock obviously was in the stands. Like you could see some people that were definitely brought out there and that really were interested watching along. So they had a few celebrities in the crowd. The whole setup was good. Like it did not disappoint me. I was not disappointed by this. The Jim Crockett Promotions version of what they did for this pay-per-view, I could watch this anytime. Like this was really well done. A lot of credit to Conrad Thompson for all the flack that guy gets on a regular basis. This was a very well done show. And I'll tell you, go listen to his interview on Keeping It 100 because when he laid out how this show got put together and how everything just kind of like lapped on through each other. Listen, the Starcast thing is his baby. That's his money grab. And for wrestling, I understand it, but the fact he was able to put this together, this for a wrestling promotion, first time was great. Was really good. This was an A- pay-per-view to me. I felt that good. what didn't get me over to the A was that last match. The expectations were high, and it was going to be tough to live up to the rest of that card. But anyway, the rest of the card you got here. 4 corners match. And as I said, this is for the Progress World Championship, which I really didn't even know much about Progress. I mean, I'll never get to watch that organization, but I've heard about it. Jonathan Gresham, I don't know if he worked in that organization or not, but apparently he's going to be brought up in this mix to be part of this match. And so they did that. And with all said and done, we didn't even know what was going to happen after the whole Death Before Dishonor deal. If we were actually going to see him come back. This was surprising to see him come back and be part of this. Against Nick Wayne, against Konosuke Takeshita, Alan Five Angels, we haven't seen in a while, but, a couple of disgruntled AEW types in this match. Gresham looked great. Nick Wayne, Takeshita got some moves in there. They didn't give a whole lot of time for these guys in the match, but for what it was worth, quick match. Gresham gets in here, and for the story that we really get out of this match, Gresham is moving on into Progress to go after number one contender for the world title there, which is great for him. Current champions Chris Ridgway. I know nothing about that promotion. It's not one I get to watch on TV on a regular basis, and it's a British title, by the way. Did not know about that either. But some of the names you would have heard from that are synonymous with Progress Wrestling, you could say Marty Scurll, who has been a champion twice, Mark Andrews or Manders, Walter, also being Jimmy Havoc was a former champion. I'm looking at the names here. Mark Haskins has been a champion. Pete Dunne was a champion. So this is part of that group that was definitely synonymous with the NXT UK crowd. You see a number of names that came out of that mix. And by the way, Jonathan Gresham was a former Progress champion, and he had held the belt until the belt was vacated. And then Chris Ridgway won it on June 5th. As part of their Super Strong Style 16 event. There we go with that. So Gresham's already been a part of that organization. He gets to go back, challenge for the title that he never lost. That's the story with that. That makes sense. Okay, good. Then you get the 4 Horsemen, Brian Pillman Jr., Brock Anderson, accompanied by the Enforcer, Arn Anderson, and the Rock and Roll Express team led by Ricky Morton and Kerry Morton with Robert Gibson at ringside. I like Brian Pillman Jr. and Brock Anderson as heels. This works for me. Brian Pillman was a great heel as part of Hart Foundation and MLW. They gave him a chance to be a heel, and he worked there, and then they turned him face for whatever reason. But I really feel like give Pillman the chance to be that. Plus, I just think he's getting better. They're going to make a change where the Varsity Blondes are going to split. I feel like that's going to happen down the line. I don't know when that's going to be, but for what it's worth, I really enjoyed the match. It wasn't a whole lot of time they put into it. But Kerry Morton, and by the way, Nick Aldis added great commentary to this match. Really putting over, Brian Pillman Jr., Brock Anderson, the whole story behind that. But then Kerry Morton with Rickey. That NWA story, it's fun to see Kerry Morton on Power and NWA USA. I know down the line, NWA 74, he's going to go after the junior heavyweight title against Homicide on that show, which is the next pay-per-view coming up for everybody to go and catch up in about 4 weeks. So you got that coming for you. But it was good to see these guys in the ring. And Brock Anderson, listen, I mean, it's one of the few times we get to see him in a real spotlight here. So Brock and Brian Pillman Jr. win. Good match. Loved it. Then you got the match that you could have gone longer. I mean, you could, and the truth was the crowd really ate this up. This was awesome. Chance, fight forever. And they only got 11 minutes, but of course there was a pretty packed card. 11 matches on the card total. With the Fatal 4-Way match with the AAA stars, Rey Fenix, Bandito, Laredo Kid, Black Taurus. The only person that was not part of this was El Hijo de Vikingo, who's the current AAA champ. And there was a Fatal 5-Way they had at Triple Mania, the last show they did. I think it was last month, like 5 weeks ago, they said it was. And they even mentioned the fact about how Bandito coming back from a head injury. And he's back into this match, and he had fought the night before, and the guy is just killing it. Rey Fenix, this was his showcase. These guys put some moves together that were just ridiculous. Some of this helicopter stuff going on. Some of the moves that were done, Black Taurus. There was some strong move where he just, I forgot what the move was off the top rope that he did, but man, these guys were just studs. This could have been a main event on this show. It was that good. Really great. But it really just kind of odd to see this just like stacked in the middle of the card. Where but then, you put this in the middle here, you get that excitement up really good. And then you kind of feel like after all the excitement of that match, then you go into the Impact World title match, which is kind of quiet, but the match was really good. Let me just tell you. Jacob Fatu kind of started off a little bit slow. Maybe it's just the fact that this crowd he got to work in front of, because he's normally working in front of like 500 to 1,000, 2,000 at the most at 2,300 arena. Tonight, 9,000 plus. Like that's a pretty good crowd, and some real mentors out there in the ring. Because for some of these wrestlers, it was a chance for them to get exposure by the other promoters. Because we're pretty sure that Court Bauer and I don't know if Billy Corgan, not so much, but Nick Aldis would be a representative for NWA. You got Scott D'Amore. Like, you got a lot of stars in there. And Scott D'Amore having the trust of Jacob Fatu to take this match on. And by the way, no build. But if we wanted to have this match again, I would be all in for it. Because this was fun. It pissed me off because I saw the major players come in with Brian Myers and Matt Cardona. It sucked. But they did the run in. What are you going to do? Overall, I did enjoy how this match came about. Like, it was a lot of good power moves. And just with Jacob Fatu, I mean, Schiavone and Crockett were just amazed by some of this, just really the agility of Jacob Fatu. Just to go ahead and dive out of the damn ring, over 300 pounds. David Crockett got to say it over and over. But yeah, man, that guy with the moonsault, that finisher is just devastating. And he did not get the pin. And then the same thing with Josh Alexander, could not get the C4 spike on him. But he did get on one of the major players. I forget which one. It was Brian Myers, I think it was, right? But I'll tell you, that was set up there, and Fatu looked fantastic. Josh Alexander, just give him whoever. The guy's good with anybody. And he's a very good world champion. But Impact, you could tell, they just don't get that much notice. And stop sleeping on Impact Wrestling, folks. You should not. That with MLW, this was a good showcase for them tonight. Hopefully as this was planned, because every person that was on announcing, you would hear people kind of plugging away. I don't know if Nick Aldis mentioned about NWA 74, but Dombrowski, he was plugging away. Tom Hannafin, plugging Emergence. MLW, planning a new season, new TV deal, all that stuff. Dombrowski was definitely making sure to shamelessly self-plug, which was fine. It wasn't over the top, and it wasn't anything where I felt cringed on any of the show. I enjoyed this, top to bottom, and I thought some of the stuff was really fun, what they did. Then you go on, and we move into Briscoes and the Von Erichs. There wasn't much to say to this match. Really, it was just like David Crockett with a fascination of the first of all, Schiavone talking about the Sussex County chicken, the redneck kung fu. Like, it was an interesting match to see the announcers, kind of like the audience. You probably don't get to see the Briscoes that much. If you didn't catch them in Impact, if you haven't caught them in NWA during the Crockett Cups, if you didn't catch them in Ring of Honor, then yeah, you don't know what you're missing, man. But the Briscoes being around for so long, these two matches, these two tag teams really good in here. A lot of backstory when it came to the Von Erichs. They got to put their moves in. Marshall with the claw. That was great. But the Briscoes going over was the right move. I understand that part. What I did enjoy a lot too, Impact and Knockouts title. So Rachel Ellering coming back into the mix. A nice put together three-way. But, you could have just given me Deonna Purrazzo and Jordan Grace. I would have been happy. And Deonna Purrazzo looked amazing tonight. Jordan Grace, strong, powerful, just a freak of nature. She's a very good champion right now. Makes that point. Her and Rachel Ellering work really well together. And Ellering looked good. They did a good job of kind of telling a quick story to see where Ellering got hurt. And then she's coming back. And that was just like the whole play of the three-way, just to kind of like let everybody, let's go one-on-one for a while. Not a whole lot of three-way kind of things, but there were a few things, especially with the top rope, suplex, things like that. You always see those matches like that. So that was good. Ellering takes a submission. Grace retains the title. So no title changes, nothing like that. But I guess the newsworthy of the whole show is you look at what they did on the card and the people that were featured. And you got to just keep in mind that some of these stars that get noticed tonight on Ric Flair's last match, all having a good chance to be shown in exhibition matches. Because think about it. Mance Warner being recognized tonight, the New Japan stars, Killer Kross and Davey Boy Smith Jr. And look, with Killer Kross, you look at him, quick victory over Davey Boy Smith Jr., and you're going to say to yourself, Killer Kross, what organization is going to pick him up? MLW has him right now, but will MLW hold on to him? I mean, they have him, but they haven't really used much. They've done vignettes with him so far, but like the new season of Fusion has to start back up. And Killer Kross was not part of that major mix because the major mix of MLW, they were pushing up their new women's division. A lot of time on Holiday and Hammerstone, a lot of time on Enzo, the real one, right? Enzo Amore, a lot of time on Tankman and Alex Kane and all that stuff going on, and Myron Reed and all the Cesar Duran stuff, which was great. They even made the point of that. You did get Fatu's point about that during the match, which was great. Some storylines brought and intertwined. I gotta say this too. Tom Hannafin, man, that guy is a wrestling book. This guy follows everybody. I love how he mentioned AEW storylines, MLW storylines. Cause Hannafin Hannafin was on the, that's what it was. Hannafin was on the commentary for Fatu and Alexander. And I love how Hannafin knew about the political backstage backstabbing of Cesar Duran without saying him by name, which was really great. So you got that going for you. And then, like I said, Knockouts World title leading up to the main event, which was a really good match. And I was glad to see the women's match here. You could have had another women's match, but I think Conrad did a good job where he mentioned on the interviews going on leading up to either through Busted Open, through K100, Keep It at 100. I'll tell you that I think the variety and the diversity of the whole show, you get a women's match, you get strong style, you get, a couple of title matches, you get AAA, Lucha Libre style, you get a lot of stuff. It was a really good set of how the matches went. I thought, even the booking, I was really happy with what was being booked, who decided to go over. That was all good to me. And then we get to the main event. Now, before we get to the main event, there was a vignette, or there was a backstage segment, and I don't forget the guy, but it was one of the guys that hosts the ad-free shows, one of the ad-free shows for Conrad Thompson. And I don't think it's the one that's with Josh. What was his name? I forget the last name. I heard it, but I don't remember it. But he did okay back there. And he did a segment where Jerry Jarrett and Jeff Jarrett are back in their locker room, and Jerry the King Lawler pops up. So the whole Nashville, Memphis Mafia kind of thing going on. And with that, it was very good. Jerry the King Lawler just ripping on Ric Flair, which was great. The King is a great heel. Just say it, okay? For what it's worth. I know we always got to remember him for what he does on Raw and puppies and all that stuff, right? And the kind of stuff. But Jerry the King Lawler and just the original heyday. Just go back to his stuff when he worked with Andy Kaufman. All the stuff he did with Bill Dundee, and just the stuff he did in Memphis. Like, what a star he was, man. And even the stuff in ECW when he just pissed off that damn crowd and got Tommy Dreamer hurt, right? Like, all that stuff going on. I was just, man, you want to piss some people off. Jerry the King Lawler had a very good way of just what was a tremendous heel, just a tremendous wrestler anyway. We never look at what he did in his past career, but really was just good stuff. Now, you saw some vignettes where some of the stars that Flair worked with, of course, without Dusty being out there, which was one of his biggest opponents for years. Cody putting a great message out there about how his dad was so proud of him and really enjoyed all the work he got to work together. Jim Ross called Ric Flair the greatest of all time, period. Then you see Stinger come on and talk about him and so many others. I'm surprised we didn't see Ricky Steamboat, who was actually kind of considered as one of the first people that were trying to pitch to have the match with Flair. But listen, what they decided to do tonight to make it a tag team match was the right move, because Rick couldn't do much. This was a bit of that Hulk Hogan at the end of his career kind of deal where he should not be out there because he can't take a bump. This wasn't Ric Flair that he can't take a bump. The problem is just Ric Flair he's got the strength and he might have some endurance, but not that physical endurance where he can go ahead and go out and for working a 27-minute match, they had to really put some gaps in to let him get some time to breathe. And the age, you could just tell. I mean, there was a couple of shines of like some good stuff, but like some of his stuff wasn't crisp. The chops were not crisp across the board. They did that. Some of his punches look fine. The figure four, that took a bit of work to get to. But there was a lot of things that were kind of camouflaging everything that was going on and masking over the limitations that Ric Flair had in this match. Because first of all, I mean, you made the match look so good with the damn promos leading up to it. Like those three, the lead up of the docuseries up to this feud and the heat they put on this story was fantastic. And it was really played up well. I mean, it was not going to be about the match. And anybody who thought it was going to be about the match shouldn't have thought that. It's just a story. The story was told great. And all you had to do was just do just enough to make that story work right. And they did. So you start off with Jarrett coming out first, wasting time to come down to the ring. And then he's just really being just the worst piece of shit heel possible to get this crowd to hate him so badly. He did a great job. Jarrett was a standout for this show tonight. He did really good here with Flair. Lethal, fantastic. And there was just a good, you know what, the one part of the match I really enjoyed a lot was, you know, when Andrade and Lethal were going at it, and those two cats can go, man. You're like, you know what, give me a few more minutes, please. But they had to let Rick back in. I know, it's Rick's match. But you know what, I want to see Andrade and Lethal wrestle each other. Can we get them in Ring of Honor or AEW? Can we get them wrestling, please? Like, I want to see those guys out there working, and let's work off of the Ric Flair's last match. Something, just give me that. I want that to continue, please. That was really, really good. Now, with that said, in this match, it had a lot of heat, and Jarrett and Lethal just played it off so well. Jarrett's such an old school piece of shit chicken heel, played everything out there, kind of had like a feel of a Zbyszko out there, a bit of a Lawler, a little bit of a Bockwinkel kind of feel to it. Was just really great psychology throughout the match. So well told. Rick pretty much didn't have to do anything. Like all the heavy lifting was really done by Jarrett, Lethal, and Andrade playing a great babyface. Really played a great babyface tonight. Hot Tag was so into it. And, you know, always having to take bumps because he would always get thrown out of the match because they were always going after Rick. And, like, he played his role great. That was really good stuff. So now, Dave Penzer is the one that's doing the announcements. And Penzer, I mean, he must have got a coffee or some B12 shots because he did about the best ring introductions I've heard him do in a long time. Because that guy was really good in WCW. And, you know, when you hear him in Impact Wrestling, it sounds like he's just kind of like mailing it in. Which is okay. I mean, you're not getting that super big crowd, but he got a big crowd for this tonight. You can just tell Penzer really wanted to make this stand out. And, you know, he sounds good when he says Ric Flair's name. So that was good. He did a really good job with that. Flair looked a bit nervous when he got into the ring because he had a little struggle with the robe. And then he comes out with the 10 pounds of gold. They try to do a lot of stuff with him. You can kind of tell he was just kind of like going through the maneuvers, but he was very nervous. Like he did not have that full confidence like he normally does. Once he got in the ring, he got more or less into it. He did not embarrass himself. I'll say that. There was enough things going on to make it where Ric Flair was not going to look that bad. He looked old. He looked tired. And he could barely get himself off the ground once he got up and done the match. But it's also a 73-year-old man doing a 27-minute match. And he did get color. And he did do what he could. Couldn't move around the ropes that much. So they limited that part. I mean, if only in the very beginning did they have him a little bit agile moving around. For the most part, they just kept it the psychology, kept it slow pace. The commentary kept it talking about that's what Ric Flair wanted to do, was like slow the pace down to something he could definitely manage with. That was the work. Not a whole lot of bravado, not a whole lot of like, you know, messing around, a lot of showboating, a lot of cocky, you know, just kind of this stuff for the first 5 minutes. I lapped it up, man. I was just loving it. We don't get that kind of stuff anymore. We don't get a lot of matches where you had that kind of pomp and circumstance and all that bullshit that goes on in an old school match. That used to be the normal thing. And a lot of matches like that. Especially when you're going to go the Broadways, you got to have that kind of stuff going on because you already know the heat, the animosity, the tension. You can cut it with a knife in there because of the way that match was booked. That was really great stuff. Then you get a point where Jarrett is avoiding Flair every time Ric Flair is tagged in. You're playing that off. And then there's a point where Jarrett is getting beat up and he wants to run out of the ring and Karen has to go ahead and pull him back in. That's good stuff. Then they had the whole thing going on where Rick's chops were a little bit off, but he started finally slapping a bit and you could hear it sounded better. But he wasn't crisp on all those moves. Like the slap, the chops were not great. Could have helped. Wish we could have had a couple more woos, but he did get them in. But you could just tell he got tired quick. Like whatever it was, I don't know if it's the excitement or what it was, or just going down the ring. All that was going on did kind of wear him out. He did get gassed. That's a rare thing for Ric Flair to do. But what are you going to expect of him, man? At this age, it's not much. I mean, I figured this is about as good as you were going to get a Ric Flair tonight. That's going to be tough. No matter how much training you did for 5 months, we're not going to get this Ric Flair doing everything. Like he did take a suplex and they tried to put him up on the top rope and they realized they can't do it. Like they were trying to do a few things extra and just Rick was just wearing out. And so like even the moves that Jarrett and Lethal had to put on Rick, they had to kind of like keep it soft and they tried to protect him. So they were doing right by that. But yeah, Rick was he was a little bit overwhelmed by how much he was going to try to do. And I don't know if it was just the excitement or what, but he struggled a little bit, but he didn't fail badly. He didn't embarrass himself too much. The struts, the whole thing that the strut was stolen by Ric Flair because he stole it from Jackie Fargo. They all did that thing. I actually like that Jerry Lawler did the whole thing of like, we all know who did it. We could all say at the same time, Jackie Fargo. All that kind of stuff was good. And Jarrett, all his thing. Jarrett gets the guitar shot. Andrade makes him miss Flair so that Lethal takes the shot, takes him out. And then there's a point where Jarrett gets laid out and then Flair gets to go ahead and lay on top, barely conscious basically, but is able to go ahead and crawl over to get the pin. And originally Mike Chioda, the former WWE referee, got ref bumped. So a dusty finish in this match? No doubt about it. You get the ref bump, he's knocked out, and then David Miller, who's been a longtime referee, who Schiavone just, was praising all over the place, he comes in. 3 count, done. Flair gets the pin over Jarrett. Match is done. And Flair celebrates, gets some good a little speech going on at the end, a lot of confetti coming out. And Flair, they get him to hold the 10 pounds of gold one more time, or the big gold belt, the one that Conrad Thompson's holding on to. And Conrad Thompson got to be a part of this match. He was getting taunted by Jeff Jarrett at ringside. And then you saw that his wife or Rick's daughter, Megan, got involved. And yeah, the whole deal that, Andrade brought in what Conrad Thompson had given some contraband for Ric Flair in the form of brass knuckles. Ric Flair hits him, gets the win, and there's that. So overall, like I said, it was an A- pay-per-view. It would have been an A if Ric Flair was able to go and really pull off, like, what would have been a miracle for him to have really pulled off the kind of match he could have had when he faced Jay Lethal 11 years ago. If he could have done that, that would have been amazing. But at this point, it's asking a lot. Plus being so far out of the ring for so long. I mean, he was taking bumps and he was doing a few of the things that were very familiar to us. But yeah, that guy can't go much anymore. I don't want him to get back in the ring anymore. I want him to be done. He did what he wanted to do. And the thing was, I think what it really was, when you look at this all together in retrospect, the send-off that WWE did with him in 2008 was fantastic. Like, it was really remarkable. And yeah, but with him, I'm not surprised he was not ready to go ahead and sit down and let it go. He was still, I think he wanted to keep going until he couldn't go anymore. And that's what it was. Then, even the thoughts of trying to come back at some point, like, there was no place for him to go right away. So, like, there were no other organizations he could go to wrestle. And he just wanted to keep going. So he went to Impact. He went to Australia with Hogan and did all that. And he got to wrestle for quite a while. But he never got that send. Like, if he was going to go ahead and kind of, everybody feels like he tarnished that retirement that he got, which he pretty much did. But it's because I think his allegiance was to what he got to do with Mid-Atlantic Wrestling, with NWA, then to WCW with the Crockett's. Because I think that's really what it was for him. It was that the Crockett's were the ones that, after he left Virginia and the AWA, to come to, you know, the Carolinas and work with the Crockett's. And all the work he did with Mid-Atlantic into Georgia, and just the whole thing he did with Jim Crockett Promotions, his allegiance is with them. I mean, it would have been great to see Jim Jr. be a part of this and see this, but David did a great job with Conrad. They really did a bang-up job. I give them all the credit in the world. I really enjoyed this night. Some great exhibitions, and I'm wondering what people are going to say about it. But you know what? I'm one of the few people that decided to do a post-show about this. Like I said, it's just being fightful. Maybe there's a few others that are doing this tonight. But, you know, and of course, Wrestling Observer will talk about this. But, like, honestly, nobody else. Like, I know there's some other podcast wrestling brethren that would not even take the time to talk about this show. When they should have. But of course, you know, yours truly, King of Podcast, likes these kind of shows. So that's why I do it. You know, I'm the one that will do, like, when MLW had their pay-per-view, I covered that. Impact Wrestling shows, you know, I'm going to talk about that too. When Ring of Honor does their shows, you know, I'm going to talk about that too. I will do post shows for them. And I always said I was going to do a post show for this. As soon as I heard about it, I was like, oh yeah, we're talking about this. And I'm all in. And I really enjoyed this pay-per-view. It was more than I expected because the fact that I was just the camaraderie, the nostalgia, that whole feel of what they did with the presentation. I really, really enjoyed it. So shout out to Conrad Thompson. Shout out to David Crockett, Shivani, all the crew that made this show possible tonight. And I hope it opened the door for some other promotions to continue to do things like this. And hopefully the Jim Crockett Promotions brand will continue and we can have more multi-branded pay-per-views like this. I hope this is not, we don't need another Ric Flair's last match, but we could use another Jim Crockett pay-per-view. I hope they do it. I'm all in for it. Bring it on. Let's do it. However you got to do it. It would be really great. And I wouldn't see why NWA didn't really get a little more involved with it. Like, I mean, I didn't hear Billy Corgan say anything about it, but I guess there was something about him with the NWA. Maybe not to being stuck with the Jim Crockett brand, but obviously, you know, a lot of Billy Corgan, what he's doing is in Jim Crockett territory. He's working in Nashville studios at the Skyway studios in Nashville. He's working Oak Ridge, Tennessee and all these Oak Grove, Tennessee and all this stuff. Like, he's working southern shows, working St. Louis. He's doing the NWA territories. And part of that's, you know, down south. But, yeah, I don't know. Something about that. That's it for Ric Flair's last match. Really great stuff. And then I'll come back now this coming Wednesday, hopefully with full internet back in hand, to do another Wrestling is Real podcast. Because wrestling needs us. Thank you for listening to the Wrestling is Real podcast. You can find all previous episodes at WrestlingIsReal.com or subscribe to the show on all major podcast outlets, including Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Follow the King of Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at King of Podcasts. And search King of Podcasts on YouTube. Or type youtube.com/JBRASCO951. This has been a presentation of the King of Podcasts Radio Network.